Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Monday, July the 2nd, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And we are anticipating the celebration of Independence Day coming up in a couple days on July 4th. A lot of people don't know this, but it's a little bit of historical arcana. The Declaration of Independence was approved by the Continental Congress on July 2nd. So in theory, this is the day that we should be celebrating Independence Day. But of course, the way it actually works out, we celebrate the day that they signed the thing. But
So do you know why they made the 4th?
I don't think I know the reason for that. No.
Okay.
I suspect
maybe they had other. I was going to say maybe they just had other things going on.
Yeah, it was all the committee reports. That's what it was. No, I think it's just because that was the day they signed it. I think that they consider that to be the official day because it was all signed on that day. And John Hancock put his John Hancock down and so forth. But, yeah. But,
and that's where we got the phrase, sign here, put your John Hancock.
John Hancock. Oh, yeah. He wanted to make sure, well, he knew that the king was half blind. He wanted to make sure he could read his signature. I love that story.
And he has a legible signature, which is unlike many.
Yeah, like
others.
me. I have no legibility at all. I mean, my signature has gotten to the point now where it starts off with a TH and the rest of it just disappears. I have no idea what it is. I was noticing that when I was doing the book signing recently. It's just like, oh boy, this is really bad. This is the time you appreciate a Sharpie because the Sharpie kind of blurs it over anyway, so you don't notice. So, anyway, how you doing? How's your weekend?
I'm doing great. Well, I've got all sorts of stuff to report. So, do you want to start with me or with you?
I think I actually did what reporting I wanted to do this morning. So why don't you just go? Because you always have plenty to do. So we got to get as much time for you as we can.
Well, I've made it very well known how much I love the cold and detest the heat, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So Friday night, my sister was over and we were, we went to dinner, we came home, we're chatting, and I started to notice it was really warm. So I went and I cranked my AC up to make it a little bit cooler. And I went, how come I'm not hearing it come on? Well, each time I went back to check, it had gone from 73 to 75 to 77. I went, okay, this is going the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's not a good sign, no.
Yeah, so I went and checked my upstairs thermostat, which is kind of like the control panel, and it had a fault error on it, and nothing was blowing, and I knew it was out of commission, and, that never is good news for me. And so I kind of went into okay, what do I do? I mean, it's Friday night. People don't usually work on the weekend. I have a company that I work with that installed this AC. They treat me like family. And so I'm thinking they're just a small company, but I'm like, okay, well, I'll email them. I'll leave them a voicemail. I'll text them. And whichever way they pick up their communication, at least they'll know that I'm throwing out an SOS. So my little sister, she's sitting next to me at my desk when I was sending the email. And she was, I don't know, how do I say this? She has such beautiful energy when combined with mine. And we kind of do things very similarly. And so we were both kind of on the, okay, what do we have to do here? And I really felt her supportive energy. So while she's sitting next to me, I start out, saying, hey, so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm sitting here in my very warm office because my AC is not working. And you know how I detest the heat. And I was being really melodramatic. Okay. And I said, my thoughts of a very cool indoor weekend are starting to fade quickly.
Oh, dear.
And I said, I just want you to know, however, I have not lost my sense of humor because every time I wrote another couple words, my sister would just giggle, which made me giggle. And we were laughing so hard, I could barely even finish typing because I could barely see. My eyes were like watering up with happy, funny tears. And, I said, I haven't lost my sense of humor. I just want you to know while I'm writing this, I'm really laughing. I said, however, it is true that I really need your help. Please, please, please contact me as soon as you can.
That's a nice little Sarah Bernhardt you did there.
Yeah, I mean, she and I just laughed, and I was so aware that our laughter just really put me in a space of, it's going to be a warm night for me, but, it's all okay. It's all good. Everything always works out for me. I'm not going to die. I still have an air conditioner. I mean, I have an air conditioner. It'll get fixed, but I have a freezer and a refrigerator. So I have these really cool ice packs that I use like when there's injury and you need to put a cold pack.
Right.
And so I was like placing them all over my body and I'm cooling myself down and I'm swapping out the ice packs and I'm laying with my head on the footboard because the ceiling fan is directly over the footboard. And so I'm just laying there and I'm like, all right, well, it's 80 degrees. And my sister, this was so funny before she left. She said, man, you look hot. And I said, yeah, just touch my skin. She goes, oh my gosh, you're so damp to the touch. And she goes, I know you're not going to like this, but like, I'm not hot at all. So I touch her forehead and I'm like, you're like a cotton ball. You're so dry. And we just started giggling more. And she just kept saying, I'm a cotton ball. I'm a cotton ball. And we just were making so much humor and lightness out of something that normally would be like really excruciating.
Literally a meltdown.
Literally a meltdown. And here's why I know everything always works out for me, or one of the ways. So yes, my AC went out, but it didn't go out until after the sun had already gone down.
That helps. Which
meant even though, yes, it did get warmer in the house, the sun was not beating on my house, making it worse.
Right.
It was the coolness of the night. So that was a positive thing. And I knew I wasn't going to get totally restful sleep. And, I had all the blankets off and I was just laying, on top of the sheet, just, hoping that the coolness of the fan would move things around for me. And so I woke up at one point and I looked and there was a signal on my phone, my cell phone. And I looked and at 2:20 something, my air conditioning people responded.
Wow.
Who gets service at 2 something in the morning? But I do. And he said, hi, Wendy. We will have someone out there for you between 8 and 10 in the morning.
Nice.
Can I tell you the level of comfort that gave me, knowing that, instead of this is just going to go on forever and ever and ever, it's like it's going to be looked at tomorrow morning. Yeah. So I was like so excited.
Very good.
And so anyway, he sent one of his guys, and I've seen him before. His name's Roberto, and he came out, very, very pleasant. And, he took a look at what the problem was, and he told me, and apparently it was a capacitor that had gone bad, and he showed me the old one, and the base of it had bubbled out. And I said, oh, like a cell phone battery when it gets overheated, how it bubbles? He goes, exactly. Because so I've replaced it. And he said, I turned it on. Now we just need to wait about 5 minutes and it'll start blowing. And it did. And I have such a great air conditioner. Within, I think, 5 hours, I went from 83 degrees down to 72.
Very nice.
So, I mean, that was cool. But here's what's
literally
really like, it's literally cool. But another thing that was remarkable is I've been teaching my sister for a long time about law of attraction and how to, utilize it in a way that really works. And many years ago, she could care less. But more in the last couple of years, she's been really coming along and really going, yeah, this stuff really works. And I like to understand it better. And she's the one who's gotten really good at how I've taught her about metaphors, that whatever stuff circumstantially happens in your life is always a message from your inner being about something pertinent to you. And so before we even hit our laughter track on Friday night, she goes, so what do you think this message is supposed to be for you that your AC went out? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I hadn't even gotten there yet, but she was already there, which I was so proud of her for that. So I told her, I said, I'll definitely be working on it. Trust me. Well, having an AC go out until I know what specifically went out didn't give me a whole lot of information. So after my AC was now, blowing cold, I went and Googled and I said, okay, what does a capacitor do? Well, I could tell you all sorts of long scientific jargon, but here's how it landed for me. A capacitor modulates energy. It stores energy. And it's kind of like a conductor, like energy out, energy in, energy out, energy in. And I went, so this is about me and my energy and how my energy is flowing.
And how it's being stored, too, because it's about storing energy.
Yes. And so I'm like, okay. And like as soon as I knew what a capacitor did, immediately, and I wasn't just making this up in my head like, oh, well, then it must mean this. It's like I started to resonate to the concept. It's like I really went, oh, this is cool. This is about me and my energy and how I process energy. And then as I was getting that insight, I was being reminded by my inner being that just a week and a half ago, I had upgraded my internet speed, so it tripled the bandwidth. And I knew that that metaphor was letting me know that I had just tripled the space in which I can receive. And so now the capacitor thing with the internet upgrade, I was just getting this picture of I am now positioned to process energy faster and more than ever before. And so that in itself was cool. Now, as I had started asking some questions, the first question I asked my inner being was, okay, so is there some faulty thought that needs to be changed? Is that what this AC problem is about? And I got, nope. I said, oh, so it's not about something I've screwed up. It's not about something that I've been thinking inappropriately. And I got, nope. I went, okay, so what does this mean? And I kind of got this sense of it's just a message, like a positive message, like an affirming message. And I went, oh, well, that's cool. So I knew whatever came next, it was all going to be good.
Okay.
So when I, recognized it was about my energy and how I was now starting to flow energy, bigger, bolder than before, I was like, okay, that's exciting to me. And then I kind of said to my inner being, I went, okay, so this whole thing cost me money, though. Even though the part was under warranty, I still had to pay for the labor for them to figure it out and install it. I still had to pay an off the regular, the weekend rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, so it still costs me money. So what's up with that? And immediately I heard it was the path of least resistance to get the message to you.
Okay.
And I went, so you didn't really care that I was hot, and you didn't really care that I had to spend money. And it was kind of like, this was the path of least resistance.
Makes me wonder what the path of more resistance was.
Well, and then I kind of like really sat back in it, and I went, well, the truth is the fact that it only got up to 80 degrees during the night.
True.
Was like, I really wasn't hot. I wasn't in my happy, cool place where it's 72, or actually at night I'd crank it down to 69. But it wasn't horrible. And it got fixed early enough in the morning that really I never was like overheated. So in a way, that was not a horrible thing. And so in other words, I didn't suffer.
Right.
And I had the money. It wasn't a hardship. I didn't have to put it on a credit card. I didn't have to borrow the money from someone. I had the money available. So I'm like, okay, that's not a hardship. And what I was kind of getting was the message that came through to me really was very affirming. It was so validating for where I am in my personal evolution that I kind of recognized I would have rather this happen so I could get this message, because what's the alternative? I can't imagine how my inner being would have gotten my attention in such a big way for me to get this incredible message.
Okay.
Because when my AC goes out, my undivided attention is on that one.
So you're suggesting that because your inner being knew that made this the path of least resistance to get the message to you, because they knew you'd pay attention. Or it would
exactly.
know.
It's kind of like if I were literally deaf and my inner being tried to use a foghorn, that would really not be very effective.
Mm-hmm.
But my inner being knows how important cold air is to me. So here's one of the best ways to get my attention.
I don't know. This actually strikes me as like the 2x4 method of communication. I mean, it didn't destroy you, but I mean, it was like whack. It just kind of woke you up.
It woke me up, but it didn't hurt.
Well, that's true.
So it didn't feel like a 2x4. I've done 2x4, and that's painful. This didn't hurt. This made me laugh. My sister and I sat there and giggled through it.
Well, okay, then good. That's good.
And I was being reminded of how well I am cared for, that my AC guy emails me at 2 something in the
Yeah,
morning.
well, that was very cool. No doubt about that.
I mean, I don't know anybody who gets that level of service.
That is pretty rare, I have to say.
Yeah, and then, here's another one. I mean, this is how everything always works out for me. So after I had, texted, emailed, and whatever, my AC guy, by the time I did that, it was like 10:40 at night. And I'm thinking most likely, and I knew it was his office number, so I'm like, most likely he's not going to get this till morning. So in the meantime, I go Googling, and I'm like, okay, well, my thing says it's a fault code 82, blah, blah, blah. So I'm typing in Google, like, hey, how can we know what it is? And I stumble upon this website called Just Answer. And it said, go ahead and type in your question. And I'm like, okay. So I did. And up comes this little chat thing. And I was like, oh, cool. So there's somebody like online who maybe is going to help me. This is awesome. Well, then it says to proceed, you need to pay $5, but it's fully refundable if you're not satisfied. I'm like, okay, for $5, yeah, anything to give me some certainty that I'm going to be cool quicker, right? So
Okay.
I say, sure, here's my credit card number, $5 done. So then it takes me to this next screen, and it asks me to put in my question again, and now it's going to be sent to a technician who's going to answer within 10 minutes to 24 hours. I'm like, this is sounding kind of phony or weird.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I want my answer now.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I go ahead and type it in, and I hit submit, and now it says, you need to pay $37 in order to get this question answered. And I'm like, really? And my sister's going, don't do it. Now, she was saying don't do it even at the $5 level. Don't do it. And I wasn't feeling like, yes, I should do it, but I was feeling like I'll do anything to be cool. So I did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then $37 comes up, and she's like, really, Wendy, don't do it. I mean, don't do it. And I'm like, I know I shouldn't do it. I'm going to do it. So I went ahead and did it anyway. So now I get this email that says that, your answer is on its way. You can expect it in the next 24 hours. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I was delighted when my AC guy responded at 2 something in the morning. But actually what I found out woke me up was that I had gotten a text message from justanswer.com. And they said, the technician has now answered your question. However, your credit card was declined. And so before you can receive your answer, you need to resubmit the payment. And I'm like, I remember I've gotten a new credit card recently. And so the 3-digit code,
Mm-hmm.
I had put it in wrong the first time I did it when I was online. And I went, oh, maybe I didn't type it in correctly. But I thought, you know what? I don't need them anymore because I know my AC people are coming at 8 in the morning. So I thought, okay, well, we'll see what's up with that. I'll deal with it later. So that morning, before the AC people call to say, yes, we're on our way, I get a call from the fraud prevention department of my credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an automated system saying that they felt that there could have been a suspiciously fraudulent charge for $37, and so they declined it. And, I had to answer these questions, and they said, okay, now that you've answered all these questions, your card is now available for use again. So I was like, wow, I really am being cared for. So here's a case, and I've never seen this happen. I literally went against my internal guidance, and I was still protected that I still never even got charged with $37.
Yeah, you got a good result on that. That's really good.
And so then I went online and I went, okay, well, I'm supposed to be able to get the $5 refunded if I'm not satisfied. So I clicked a few buttons, this easy peasy thing on justanswer.com. And it's like, do you want a refund? I'm like, yes. And they said, okay, the refund is on its way.
Cool.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Even when I went against my guidance, I was still having things work out well for me.
Yeah, that's nice.
I mean, to me, this is just such an incredible story of all these amazing things that could possibly happen did. So I'm just thrilled out of my mind with how, I mean, it's just so cool to know that I'm so well cared for and that I am connected with my inner being and I can get guidance on tap. And it's all good.
And plus your AC works again.
And my AC works real well. And then I had multiple conversations over the weekend with friends and family where we did mega transformational work. I was coaching them. And every time that happens, it's a total feel good for me. I after doing some of the transformational work, some of it I was doing with my coach friend, Rhonda, and I don't think she's ever let me do this depth of work with her before. I mean, the kind that's like what we call the quantum leap kind of stuff.
Right.
And I told her, I said, I've kind of always felt like I want to be a coach to coaches. And she said, oh, I can totally see that. And so we just kind of spun some other stuff for my empire about where it's going to take me and how within it, one of the things I can see myself doing is training and teaching coaches and like up leveling their skill sets.
Very nice.
Because I was teaching Rhonda a few of the things that I with her. And she's like, you know, I've done this a little bit, but not to the extent that you did. She goes, I'm going to start putting this into like my coaching practice. And I'm, ooh, that's kind of cool. I've never really been able to train a coach or teach a coach like tips and tricks, which that was a very cool feeling for me.
That's very good. Excellent.
So I had this abundantly good feeling weekend. And then the thing I had said on Friday, I had actually planned for something else that I was planning on doing. And all weekend I kept going, when am I going to get to that? When am I going to get to that?
I've done that.
And I kept looking at it, and then something else would come up. And it wasn't a distraction. It was something that was important. And by the time the weekend was over, I'm like, still really didn't get to that. But I was getting this sense of I'm not procrastinating, because that was my concern. Like, am I procrastinating? Is there something blocking me? And I was getting, no, this is not a procrastination thing. This is you're still building the energy. You're still segment intending, getting ready for the actual action to take place, but you're not there yet. I'm like, oh, well, as long as I'm not feeling like it's my fault or I'm not procrastinating or doing something wrong, I'm like, okay, then whenever it happens, it'll happen.
Well, there you go. That's good. Very good. Yeah. Well, you did have a successful weekend, and
I did,
and you came out of it, aglow. I mean, clearly you're very excited about it. So that's really terrific. Excellent.
Anytime you get me engaged in talking about how the law of attraction works, how I'm supported, how everything always works out for me, how I see progress on any of my projects, that's always a glowing moment in my life.
Very good. I will have to remember that one. Like I'm not aware of it by now, right? And of course, I want to remind our listeners, you guys can have that same kind of moment. And if you don't have one going on immediately in your life, just join us and we'll share ours with you so that you can experience them vicariously. The only thing I want to remind you about, for those of you who are not yet subscribers, take a moment and subscribe for free to the podcast. Just go to the homepage, loatoday.net. All of the instructions are right there. About a minute later, boom, you are subscribed. All of our episodes going right to your phone. You can play them anytime you want to. You can even binge listen. So take advantage and make this part of your life every single day.
I feel like I had a binge weekend.
I think you did.
I had one good feel experience after another.
And some of them you created, which is the best part.
Well, we create all of them.
Well, true. I mean, some of them you created deliberately is what I meant to say.
Yes.
And you well, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, even the air conditioning going out, I believe I did that deliberately too.
Deliberately?
I mean, yeah, because it's not like I said, gosh, knock my AC out. But I have a relationship with my inner being, like, hey, I want to have information on tap. I want you to clue me in, let me know what's going on. I like receiving affirmation type messages. So I do believe that I was a part of that creation.
So basically, your inner being said, okay, she's ready. Operation knock out the AC. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, because I'll tell you, after the AC came back on and I had my conversation with Rhonda, I felt like I really had expanded. So like the energetic message that was coming through about the internet change in the AC and about how I have expanded my capacity for running energy and moving energy. I felt that when I was talking with Rhonda. Like I am feeling a greater level of confidence in my coaching and in my being, just being, than I ever have in my entire life. So,
wow.
To me, that was a deliberate creation. I love that message because the moment I had the message, I was able to fully step into it and experience what I wanted to experience. Now, I'll tell you this, what I'm about to say goes back about, maybe 15, 16 years ago. I had this little, I don't know if you've ever seen angel cards or heart cards, but they're like little teeny messages with like a sentence or a phrase on them. And it's kind of something where if you just want to select one for the day, you just trust that, you'll receive the right message for the day, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a little basket of these in my living room. And at the time, I was in my bedroom, and I had this lovely black cat named Abby, and she came running down the hallway, jumped up on my bed, jumped like over from the bed to the dresser, had something in her mouth, dropped it, and just ran back down the hallway.
Okay.
What the? It was just one of those moments where she was like, whoo! She was like a whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she had picked up an angel card and dropped the angel card on the dresser.
Well, that's
and
cool.
It says, celebrate life. You are doing great.
Oh, very nice.
Now, Abby has already transitioned, but I still have this card with her teeth marks in it. And I hold on to it because it reminds me, one, the message in itself was fabulous and I loved receiving it. Mm-hmm. But it reminds me that the universe can send messages any way it wants. And if I'm open to receive it, the message is available to me. Even if the universe said to my cat, hey, go pick up one of these cards and drop it off.
Well, I'm blown away by the fact that you've always talked, in the last couple of weeks anyway, you've talked a lot about how the law of attraction delivers things using the path of least resistance. So in that particular case, your cat was the path of least resistance. I'm blown away by that.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So, and that's why, I wasn't at all perturbed that my AC went out to, send me a message. I'll take good messages however they come. Since things always work out for me, it will be in a way that it's not painful and I don't have to suffer.
That's also good.
Yeah. So anyway.
And of course, you had to include some segment intention in there too. I mean, you mentioned segment intending, which of course is what we're talking about in the book. So you even found a way to segue into what we're talking about in the book. That's pretty good.
Always, always, always. Because remember, Abraham says there's only one message.
That's true.
So no matter what we're talking about, we're always going to talk about whatever the one message is.
We're batting 1,000 on that one, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I can't wait to see or hear what today's reading will bring to us next.
Well, let's find out. This is, of course, from the book The Law of Attraction, The Basics of the Teachings of Abraham by Esther and Jerry Hicks. We are in Part 5, Segment Intending, as we just mentioned. And the particular subtopic we're looking at is dividing my days into segments of intentions. Sounds like we're about to really get into it. It says, the point at which you now stand, the point from which you are now consciously perceiving, that point is a segment. Your day may be divided into many segments, and there are not two of you who would have precisely the same segments. On one day, your segments may be different from the next, and all of that is fine. It is not necessary to have a rigid schedule of segments. It is important that you identify when you are moving from one segment, and therefore from one set of intentions, into another. For example, when you wake up in the morning, you are now entering a new segment. That time that you are awake before you get out of bed, that is a segment. The time that you are preparing yourself for your next activity. That is a segment. When you get into your vehicle, that is a segment, and so on. And whenever you realize that you are moving into a new segment of life experience, if you will pause for a moment and set forth aloud or in your own mind what you most want as you are moving into that segment, you will begin by the powerful law of attraction to solicit thoughts, circumstances, and events, and even conversation or action from others that will harmonize with your intent. And as you take the time to recognize that you are moving into a new segment and you go even further by identifying what your dominant intentions are within it, you will avoid the confusion of being swept up by the influence of others, or even the confusion of being carried by your own less than deliberate habit of thought. So they still haven't actually said what the segment intention process is more specifically, but they've given us the general framework of it. And the where's the key phrase that they said? Let's see. If you will pause for a moment and set forth aloud or in your own mind what you most want as you are moving into that segment, you will begin by the powerful law of attraction to solicit thoughts, circumstances, events, and even conversation or action. So it's just the preparing of your mind each time that you enter a segment. Is that the way you would put it? I mean, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, I have been doing this for a long time, even before I knew law of attraction, and I called it, setting an intention.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, setting an intention or segment intending, which I think are synonymous, is just purposely or deliberately thinking about what it is that you want. And that's something that I think we don't normally do. I don't know that that's something anyone's ever trained us to do. Most of us, like if we take kind of what they were saying, so like you open your eyes or you have the awareness that you're waking. Most of the time we don't think about, so what do I want to think about? Or, how do I want today to go? We just kind of like are aware the alarm's gone off. We need to get up. We look at the clock and we get up. And then when, let's say the next thing you do is you brush your teeth and you take a shower and you get dressed, that's considered a segment while you're doing your personal hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time we don't think about how we want that time to go. We just brush our teeth, get in the shower, and put our clothes on.
This is true.
But, if we took the time to say, you know what? While I'm doing these things that are pretty much autopilot, I would love to fill my mind with something really empowering to set my day off in a way that will give me really good energy to move from one thing to the next today in a way that's productive and efficient and causes me to feel good. And if you set the intention for something like that, it might come to mind, hey, why don't I listen to one of the podcasts from, like if it's morning, you could say, oh, you know what? Walt's on live right now. Let's just put him on live right now. Or if it's not during a time he has a live show, let's just listen to one of the archives. Let's see what's going on. If not that, put on something else. Do you have power music that will make you feel good and move your body in a way that causes you to feel good? But if you didn't think about it and you just moved on with your day, you actually are missing an opportunity to set up something really good for you.
It's interesting. I mean, as you're describing that, you're reminding me of something that came out through the news in the past 3 or 4 hours before we started doing this podcast today. Some people may be aware there was an ongoing crisis over the last 9 or 10 days. A group of young people from Thailand, I believe it was, a soccer team actually, and their coach got lost in a massive cave system, and rescuers sending representatives from the major countries around the world who are experts at spelunking and doing rescues and dealing with adverse circumstances and so forth. We're all diving into, literally in some cases, trying to do everything they could to rescue these young people and their coach before they died from the experience, because they'd been trapped underground for a number of days. I think it's 9 days. And 3 or 4 hours ago, we got word through all the news agencies that they've been found, and they were found alive, and looks like they're going to be okay, which is fantastic. And I think about that situation. I mean, they brought in experts from the U.S., from Britain, from China, from I think Australia. I mean, there were like a number of major countries that contributed experts of various specialties to do everything from helicopter flights to going into the shafts of the cave system, to people who are experts at operating infrared and heat seeking and all kinds of equipment and so forth. I mean, they were just using every technology we know of in order to find these people. And when they were doing that, every step of the way, they may not have known about segment intending, but you got to believe that their spokespeople are talking to the news media saying, yes, we're still determined we're going to find these people. And they're talking to each other, okay, what can we do best in order to find these people? And it's on their minds constantly. Okay, we're going to dig them out. How are we going to dig them out? Where are we going to find them? What's it going to take? They're all throwing huge amounts of energy into it. It's no wonder they found them. I mean, considering all that they did, it's no wonder that they found them. And yet, of course, we're still used to the idea that, wow, this is a great miracle. They were found. They were found at the last moment. And as I think about it from a segment intending point of view, I say to myself, the amazing thing would have been if they hadn't found them because of all the energy they put into, we're going to find them. We're going to find them.
Well, the moment you started talking about this, and no, I was not aware of it because I just hadn't heard this news.
Mm-hmm.
The thought that came to me was a lot of people were praying.
Yeah.
And we don't often think of it this way, but a prayer with positive intention is synonymous with segment intending.
That's true.
So if someone says, God, please do whatever is necessary in order to bring this to a positive solution so that everybody who's in these caves will be able to find air until somebody can rescue them. But that, the best case scenario will be that they are found and they'll be pulled out without harm. That is segment intending. That is segment intending. And many people do that in the form of prayer. And that doesn't mean like, oh, look, they're doing law of attraction. It's like segment intending is done in multiple ways. Abraham's just talking specifically about it, to do it more deliberately. But if you're a praying individual, you may do that in times of crisis automatically, or you may do it when you're desiring something automatically. But I believe when Abraham's laying it out, they're saying, and this is how I read it, it can be used not just when there's a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
In times of crisis, I think that's when more people are putting their energy and their best thoughts for a positive outcome.
Sure.
But we can do that all day long throughout the tiny segments of our day.
And I like the phrase that you used about putting it out for a positive outcome. And the reason I like that is the news reports of this situation leading up to the discovery of the soccer team and their coach and their rescue were all very positive statements. That's why it captured my attention. That's why I was kind of following it, because the team that had assembled, the international team that had assembled to do this work, kept putting out statements like, we're confident we're going to find these people. I mean, there was no doubt expressed at all in anything that they said. So I knew it had to have a positive result. Whereas, alternatively, it could have been there were people who were expressing fear that they'd never be found and so forth. And if that was the predominant vibration, I would have been concerned. But that's not what was happening in this case. In this story, there was so much confidence, so much positive message coming out that you just knew they were going to be found. You could just tell.
And what's really cool, I think that's a beautiful example, one that I don't know that I've ever really given positive kudos to the media. But when the media has a positive message, and in a case like this where so many people are riveted and their thoughts are really on this and they want to see it through to the end, this is where the media can make the hugest positive impact for us globally.
Yeah.
Because their message does go out to so many people, and it does influence people. So if somebody is a non-deliberate creator, by default, when they hear the news people saying, we are confident that there is going to be a positive result, we are confident that we are going to find them and they will be fine. And that's a way that the media is actually influencing those who are default creators.
That's right. Exactly right.
And so influence can be used both for positive or negative. It all depends on which direction that they're, messaging. So that's a really cool example. I loved hearing that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not very often you get positive news that gets played up. So that was even more fun, I thought, just to have a very happy, positive story come out of the news media. That alone was great.
Well, when you do your mirror exercises, that's become a daily routine for you. That's like one part of your day that you're setting the intention to set your thoughts in a positive way about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of segment intending is we can take this as far as we want to take it.
Yes.
Like we can take it from when you wake up to when you brush your teeth, to when you get in the car, to when you get to work, to when you take your coffee break, to when you go back to work, to when you start a new project, to lunch, to, running an errand. I mean, every single time you kind of are switching gears, if an individual wants to be deliberate about setting their energy, about setting their intentions, I get the sensation that if you were to do that for every segment for 3 days, and this is just what's coming to me now, if you did it that deliberately for every segment for 3 days, you would have shifted your vibrational set point, and you would actually be in a space where that would start to run automatically. That it wouldn't, because if you think about it, it's like for 3 full days, you're bathing yourself in feeling good. You're bathing yourself in positive intention.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting point, because I'd actually slacked off on doing the mirror work because I was enjoying the fact that each day I was starting the day and actually doing some of the segments of the day, just feeling good without having to do any mirror work. And I was just enjoying that. I was just going with that. But the message you just gave me was essentially go back and do it for 3 days, and do it not just in the beginning of the day, do it throughout the day, and you'll get an even bigger shift. And I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe I should do that. That sounds like a good idea.
Well, and like, I don't believe that a certain exercise that we do has to be done for the rest of our life. My personal thought about things is do something until the autopilot momentum takes over.
Yeah.
And that's what I think I just heard you say.
That's
you
what's
were
happening.
Doing mirror work intentionally, but now you're not really doing that specifically in the morning, but you're kind of getting the positive results without you having to do anything manually.
But by positive result, I would say, yes, I am. And positive result means not that good things are happening, although that's true, but rather I am much more easily getting into each task with a positive mindset. I'm not having to work at it. And that, to me, is the positive result that you were referring to.
Right, and that, to me, is the autopilot. Because when you say you're not having to work at it, it's like, woohoo! And that's the reason we do these challenges, or we take these exercises in mind and say, I'm going to manually do this for X amount of time. Because to me, when you get anything that kind of goes into autopilot, it's smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's why I liked what you said, though. I love the fact that you gave me this idea of segment intending for 3 straight days and doing it throughout the entire day, the equivalent of doing a mirror exercise every single segment throughout the day, and really just focusing on that. That resonated with me. It's like, I have had a good positive result. I have been getting into an autopilot zone, but wouldn't it be great if I could take it to an even better level? Maybe I'll try to do that.
And the intending doesn't have to be paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of intention.
Right.
It could be a sentence. It could be 2 sentences. It could be whatever feels good, but just making it a point to do it, to set an intention, even if it's the same intention, which is when I go on my coffee break, I want to feel good. When I get in the car, I want to feel good. I want things around me to feel good. That might mean the air conditioning is blaring in a cold way. That would make me happy. It could be that you find a great parking place. It could be that you get a green light where normally it's almost always red and you're sitting in traffic. It could be all sorts of things. And then to add to it, the moment you recognize things are going in a way you really like, here's the phrase to say, I'll have more of that.
Right.
I'll have more of that. And I'll have more of that. So when you see the light turn green, that normally every time you get to it, it's always red and you sit for 5 minutes in traffic, and all of a sudden it's green, go, I'll have more of that. And then you notice you get on the highway and like it was really easy. It wasn't bumper to bumper getting on the ramp. You got on the on ramp and boom, you just got right on the highway, and there was plenty of space for you to do so. It wasn't that negotiating like, okay, is he going to let me in or not? And go, I'll have more of that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
every time you experience what you really desire, or if you see somebody else, if you witness someone else getting the results that really you would like to, I'll have some of that. I'll have some of that. And that's a great way to kind of boost up the segment intending, because you're like purposely noticing when things go well, whether for you or for someone else. And then you say, I'll have that, or I'll have some of that, or I'll have more of that.
I'm not sure why, but as you were describing that, I had an image of the lead character from Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist, where he goes up to, near the beginning of the story, he goes up to get more of the porridge or gruel or whatever it is, says, please, sir, I want more. And, of course, they turn that into a different theme, or Dickens turns that into a different theme in the book, but I was thinking of it in terms of that kid was segment intending. He finally had gotten some food, and now that he had the food, it's like, yeah, this is good. I want more of this.
I want more. And he was asking for what he wants.
Yes.
Which, by the way, most of us have not really taught ourselves that it's okay to ask for what we want.
It's okay to ask for what we want, yes.
Yeah, like the conversation I was having with my sister the other day, we've kind of had this theme going on for a while, and she'll tell me what it is she's trying to get from a relationship, with somebody specific. And I'll say, did you say that to him? No. I said, but you want him to read your mind so that he would know that that's what you want. And she's like, well, I didn't think of it that way. I said, but if you don't tell him, how is he supposed to know? This is a new relationship. He doesn't know this about you yet. She's like, I said, did you know it's okay to ask for what you want? And she was like, I said, I know you're not in the practice of doing it, but maybe you're not in the practice of doing it because you didn't know it was okay to ask.
Yes, could be.
And a lot of us don't know that it's okay to ask, because some of us have felt like victims that it's not okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, Tom and I were talking about victimhood this morning, and I would venture to say that the overwhelming majority of the population at one time or another feels like a victim. So that it seems very likely to me that is a common pattern. That's not just an occasional thing. That's almost normal.
And I don't know if what I'm about to say is something that someone famous said, but I've heard it said by two different people. And one person said, here's the definition of an adult. And they said the definition was, ask for what you want, knowing that the answer might be no. Now, how I interpreted that was, it's okay to ask. However, if somebody says no, you don't need to play the victim role and go, but why didn't I get what I want? But at least be willing to ask. And that, to me, is what that person was trying to teach me. Always be willing to ask. Just recognize that sometimes you're going to get yeses and sometimes you're going to get nos. But always put your desire out on the table.
And of course,
that is when you're talking with people. Of course, when you do it with law of attraction, the answer is always yes.
Always yes, that's right, yeah. And
always,
of course, even if you're dealing with a person, you can also take on the Wendy viewpoint, which is you put out the request and you get an answer, and the answer is no, and so you decide to persist anyway. Because that's what Wendy's do. They persist. They keep going. They don't say, I'm not going to let that stop me. No is not going to stop me. It's just not going to happen.
And sometimes when the persistence that comes with being a Wendy is, okay, so I'm getting a no here. So how might I ask this question in a different way to get the result that I want? Maybe I'm not asking the right question.
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm always willing to be flexible in my approach. So if I say I really want a silver Jaguar and I just can't find a silver Jaguar, well, maybe there's another color of Jaguar I'd actually prefer, but I didn't even know it existed. So then I'll say, okay, so what I'm really wanting, and it's not that I'm telling the universe, it's really I'm letting myself know. What I'm really wanting is to feel blah, 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 blah. And whatever color will make that feeling happen, that's what I'm okay with. That's what I desire.
Going more general then.
Yeah, so I thought a silver jaguar was going to do it, but you know what? Maybe there's like a really cool new color that I'd never seen before. And I'll go, ooh, now I like that. I'm glad I didn't get the silver one because this is even better.
Mm-hmm.
And now that has happened in my life many times, where I get the even better because the thing, well, like my famous, it's becoming famous to me, story about I wanted to be a bank teller. Yes. That was the career I was choosing. I wanted to be a bank teller. And this door was slammed shut in my face, and the answer was no. And when the answer was no, I had to go, okay, now I'm feeling desperate for funds. I've got to find a way to make income. And I turned my attention in the direction of, well, what skills do I have that somebody would go, okay, we'll hire you. And it was my sewing talents. And, you know, how my story goes is I was calling people out of the yellow pages, anybody who could use anybody who sews. And I got hired that day on the phone without anybody seeing my portfolio. They didn't even have proof of how good I was. And they hired me. We'd set the pay, and I was starting the next morning. And that began me learning a career about costume designing that became the most fun, fulfilling, fabulous career I could have ever asked for that I didn't know I wanted. So even though I struggled through it, I was willing to change my approach. It's like, okay, I got a big giant no on doing banking, so what else is there? I need income. And I want something that's fun. I want something that, you know, is exciting to me, something that makes me excited about getting up in the morning and going to work. Now, I thought bank telling would do it for me. I'd never done it. You've told me you've done that, and that's not all that it was cracked up to be.
It really
but
isn't.
I didn't know that. So I ended up doing something that was totally fun and very creative and incredibly fulfilling.
I want to try to get into the next section of the book in the 7 or 8 minutes that we have left, just because this is a topic that I think is the first time I can ever recall it being addressed by a major LOA figure.
All right, well, let's go there.
All right. The topic is entitled, I Operate and Create on Many Levels. And it says, in every segment of your life experience, you are operating on many levels. There are those things that you are doing in the segment. Doing is powerful creating. There are those things that you are speaking about in the segment. Speaking is powerful creating. And there are those things that you are thinking in the segment. Thinking is powerful creating. Also within each segment, you may be considering what is happening in your present. You may be considering what has already happened in your past, or you may be considering what is about to happen in the future. And when you are thinking about what you want in your future, you begin attracting the essence of that which you want for your future. But because your present has not yet been prepared for it, it will not likely come into your present, but it will begin its motion forward. And as you are moving forward toward that future place, so are those events and circumstances to which you have given thought. And that actually doesn't get into it in the level that I wanted to get into. I still haven't actually seen something that does, but it occurred to me a while back, and I remember one time we actually kind of discussed it a little bit. We don't just ask for one thing. We don't just focus on one thing. We're constantly shifting our focus around. And I would love to see and hear more from Abraham about not only what's involved in multiple attracting things at the same time, but also what happens when we're in the middle of a segment and we find our attention being split in a variety of different directions. What happens in those cases too? Because when you segment and tend, ideally you're focusing on just that one thing. But practically, life throws so many things at us so fast, particularly these days where information is coming so quickly, that being able to hold your focus on just one thing and one thing only, and just sticking to that for any significant amount of time, significant being defined as like an hour or more, is almost impossible. I mean, 100 years ago, that would have been easy because there just weren't that many things going on in life. Today, huge numbers of things going on in life. And I don't know, I'm curious to know what your take is on that. What first of all, is the significance of all these things going on that are attracting our attention, constantly throughout the day? And second, what do you think is the result that comes out of that? Does the splitting of our attention produce unintended results? Does it end up leading us to some things that we want, some things that we don't want? I mean, how do you perceive that whole thing happening? How do you see that play out?
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit in your leading up to this question, where you said something about, focusing on something, let's say for an hour, is just not an easy thing to do. And I guess I'm curious as to what that is in reference to, like who was talking about having to focus on something for an entire hour.
Oh, just me. I've never heard any LOA person say it. But I am aware of the fact that, say, 100 years ago, the number of pieces of information, we live in the information age now. 100 years ago, they didn't live in the information age. That was yet to come, many, many years in the future. And at that point in time, it's often described as having been very simple by comparison. And it was. Your life experience was very limited in terms of the number of things that you could be focusing on at any given time. So it really was a lot easier, I think, to focus on one thing for some X long period of time, just because there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on. Today, it's a different picture.
If you're saying focusing on something for one period of time, and then what happens when you get split energy, like you get distracted,
mm-hmm.
I'm thinking even while I'm painting a wall,
mm-hmm.
my focus is I'm going to paint this wall blue.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm painting this wall, I'm thinking a myriad of thoughts. Sure, I'm paying attention to the strokes. I'm paying attention to putting the paint in the roller. But I'm also thinking about, what am I going to make for dinner? What's in the refrigerator? Do I need to go shopping to buy something? What time is my husband coming home? What did I fix yesterday? What are the kids going to be happy eating? Are the kids going to come home and need homework done? Should I finish my painting before they get done? Or can they? I mean, do you see where I'm going? I'm still focused on painting, but my brain's going in multiple directions because
mm-hmm.
that's what we do. So I'm not quite sure. Based on that scenario, can you kind of regurgitate your question?
I'm thinking back scenario? To my life goes back to 1957. That's the year I was born. So my personal experience is from that point onward. And from what I remember of my earliest years and what the pace of life was like during those years, and from stories I've heard from my parents and even my grandparents about what the pace of life was before that, it just strikes me that there was a lot more of like Mayberry RFD than there was of the Matrix. It was a slower lifestyle, and things happened more slowly, and there was more time in a perceptive sense to do what you were doing, whatever you were doing. Whereas,
but since we only have like a minute and a half left of the show,
we probably should not be going into a major topic here, should we?
What's the question? What's the question that you have based on a simpler time versus now a more complicated time?
The question is, how does the greater complexity of possible things for us to have our attention drawn to, or even to deliberately focus on, how does that affect us as deliberate creators, and how does it affect us in terms of what we draw into our lives? I don't have a clear picture of that because it's a complex question.
I think at this time in our life, because of the age we live in, we can create more, and we can create more at a greater speed. That's what I believe this time and era has brought to us in terms of our ability to deliberately intend.
Oh, okay. So essentially one has accelerated with the other. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it's a topic for the next day. Well, sure, yeah, that's fine. And obviously it's a topic for the next day because we don't have enough time. But I'll keep that in mind. Maybe we'll bring it in for tomorrow's conversation, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, and I love the idea of Mayberry RFD. I love watching those shows because I love the simpler times. They remind me of different ways to think about things.
That's a good point. Well, we'll leave it there. We'll pick it up tomorrow, and we'll hope that you'll join us all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.